Welcome back to G-Man-P, the Great TV. If you tuned in, hit a like, share, subscribe. If not, we ain't doing no tripping. And what we talking about today is a witch hunt in the French Providence. And we'll be talking about the witch trials and the witchcraft. First, we're going to start off with hunting for witches in the French Providence. We're going to get to that first. In the case of European witchcraft, and especially witchcraft in French history, it can help to start with regional sources, because with hunts and trials were regional in nature. The High Middle Age did not have the degree of centralized control that we associate with modern-day France. Each region of France operated under its own body of customary law, and large landowners maintained law and order on their own estates. Political validity was the norm. Under the France was still fighting and interminably with England. The French also had constant struggles with the unruly feudal lords such as the Burgundies. Because of these interactions between authorities and those accused of witchcraft were often localized. A good place to start. The witch hunt, inquisitors, and demonology. Large-scale witch hunts and accusations of witchcraft began in Europe in the early 15th century and lasted for approximately 300 years. These were mostly conducted in secular courts. In France, approximately the majority of people targeted were women, while some women admitted to their alleged powers. Most women vehemently denied the accusation. Those who were charged were typically women without a male protector, such as spinsters or widows. Many of the accused, while not convicted, were still subjected to a lifetime of suspicion and fear. So pretty much they're saying in the 1500s, women were the ones that were into witchcraft heavily, and that some would admit to the powers they have and some would denounce it. And the women that were highly doing this were women that didn't have a partner, and a woman that she was married but her husband died. Them is the women that partake in this type stuff. Demon possessions. In addition to theoretical and legal takes on demonology, another subject was often linked to witchcraft is the idea of demonic possessions. Both women and men were embroidered in these dramas, particularly in the region of Normandy in northern France. There are many instances of women claiming to be possessed. Hearsay and hysteria abounded in these environments. The first example on record takes place in the mid-16th century with Meredith Browser. The case of Louis Gafferty attests to the ambiguous nature of these cases. Gafferty, a Catholic, allegedly bewitched the young Madeleine de Demoxel, a nun, leading to her possessions by diabolical spirits. In this instance, Gafferty was burned after gruesome torture. led him to confess crimes of witchcraft. However, decades later, Madeline herself was twice accused of witchcraft, spending her last years in prison. Clearly, lines were blurred between villain and victim, as scholars and communities grappled with notions of the supernatural. A case dedicates later concerned. A nun from the early 17th century who became consumed by her feelings for a parish priest, Father Urban Grandier, after complaints and hysterical outbursts from the 24 nuns claiming possession, Cardinal Ricciella ordered a trial for witchcraft that resulted in Grandier's death at the stake. More information can be found by searching, for example, healing professions. Some modern scholars have suggested that some activities which were criminalized as witchcraft include forms of folk healing or medicine. Village healers were often sought to heal a sick child or to create love potions. Such as midwives were in a vulnerable position. When children or mothers died during childbirth, as often happened, these nuns made easy targets. If they had the power to help, then by extension, they had the power to harm. Some scholars now de-emphasize these lines of interpretation and note that women involved in healing were often the source of witchcraft accusations. Fairy lore. Pre-Christian ideas of the supernatural coexist with Christianity. If somewhat uneasily for centuries before witch hunts became so prevalent, fairy lore, tales of the French fairies, and mythologies of legendary creatures such as Melcine, a mermaid-like water spirit, you may recognize as the Starbucks logo, can serve as evidence for historical witchcraft beliefs and practices. They also be found under these subject headings. So they're stating that the symbol, the logo for Starbucks is witchcraft because it's a marine water-like spirit. Theological sources. The subject of witchcraft was heavily debated by Christians, authorities, and scholars throughout the Middle Age, making various forms of Christian literature, theological treatises, biblical commentaries, and sermons, all useful starting places for research. Hearsay, witchcraft, deviance in women. Accusations of witchcraft often had something to do with late medieval French culture's expectations of their proper role of women in society. The infamous trial of Jean, known in English, illustrations the precarious position of women who defied these expectations. After hearing voices from God that commanded her to save France, the so-called Maid of Orleans set off the meet with the Dauphin, the eldest son and heir to the crown. Various prelates who were wary of hearsay, interrogated her before she was finally allowed to visit with the future king, whom she was able to locate among his country through stubborn diplomacy, and as an inspiring leader in battle, she paved the way for Charles to be crowned king. Once one of the most courageous women in France history, she was ultimately used and abandoned after her purpose had been served. She was captured and burned at the stake as a heretic, charges as Charges also include witchcraft and violating divine law by dressing like a man. By the English and their Burgundian allies, the Vatican canonized her as Saint Jean. In 1920, and many cities celebrate her with festivals every year. Her prosecution and death are examples of how the concept of witchcraft was expanded to play a role in mechanism of social control. So witchcraft been here for centuries upon centuries. Like this been around, you know, and they've been dabbling in witchcraft. Now we're gonna get on the witch trial and witches. The French Woman and Feminist History, a resource guide. The High Middle Age, 1300 to 1500, did not have the degree of centralized control that we associate with modern-day France under the Capeta and later Valois monarch. France was still fighting intermittently with the English. So here's a little picture of a witch doing her little witch stuff, her witchy stuff in front of everybody. And she doing her little witchy witch stuff in front of everybody. Let me see, because some of this is, because I did both of these together, because some of this stuff was pretty much on what I was reading about the hunting for witch in the French province. All right. Mysteries of earthly world, frightening occurrences such as perilous, sudden seizure, or baby born ill or disfigured left people looking for explanations and preferably some to blame. The church believed in the devil and considered witches to be their willing disciples. It was therefore the duty of the church to find and condemn them. In France, approximately 2,000 witch trials occurred between the years 1555 and 1700. While some women admitted to their alleged powers, most women vehemently denied the accusations. The church often resorted to tortures in order to elicit confessions. Women targeted were typically marginalized women as spinsters, widows, or those without a male protector. Many of the accused, while not convicted, were still subject to a life of suspicion and fear. Furthermore, women employed in healing occupations, such as laying in nurses, were in vulnerable positions. When children or mother died during childbirth, as often happened, these nurses made easy targets. If they had the power to help, by extension, they had the power to harm. In 1486, German churchman and inquisitor Heinrich Kramer, often known by his Latinized name Hierarchus Instructoris, published what essentially became a handbook for conducting torture, the Witch Hammer, containing step-by-step instructions for inquisitors on methods of torture, and became the standard medieval text on witchcraft. Second only to the Bible, it was a bestseller book for over a century, going through multiple editions and translations. Other important works on the topic include Joanne Weyer's De Prestigious Demion, which was intended as a defense of witches, perhaps a critique on the Catholic Church. These three texts formed an unofficial triology discussion, Witchcraft and Magic. The Library of Congress holds many editions. So this is really the same thing that I was really reading, but in a different form. And a lot of these are just different books, like resources to be able to go inside, and if you want to go in depth to read up on it even more. The Affairs of the Poison. The Affairs of the Poison, as it was known, was a scandal at which all France trembled and which horrified the whole Europe, as it implicated a number of prominent persons at the court of the Sun King, King Louis, in the late 1700th century, and began with the trial of Maria Magdalene, who conspired with her lover, Godin de Santa Crosky, an army captain, to poison her father and two brothers in order to secure the family fortune and to end interference in her adulterous late relationship. The Marquis fled abroad, but in 1676 was arrested. The affair greatly worked on the popular imagination, and there was rumors that she had tried out her poisons on hospital patients. She was beheaded and then burned. The Brinvilliers trial attracted attention to others' mysterious deaths. Parisian society been seized by a fade for spiritualists, fortune tellers, and those used of love potions. The most celebrated case was that of Louis La Volson, a midwife and fortune teller whose real name was Catherine Deschays Mauvance, and was clientele included the Marquis de Montpensier. La Volson was burned as a poisoner and a sorceress in 1680. A special court, the Chamber Ardent Burning Court. The affair was symptomatic of the witchcraft trial of the period throughout Europe. So that book, The Affairs of the Poison, they got a bunch of books on it. I ain't gonna go through all of them, but it's a bunch of them. You see how thick this is, and this is just all the books upon different books talking about that time when all this witchcraft was really going on and heavy, and they was making different books on it, and that's how people was living. Like, somebody get mad at you, they gonna try to do some magic or go pay somebody that know how to do magic. You know what I'm saying? But that's what I wanted to get up here and talk about today. For everybody tuned in, I appreciate it. And for the ones that didn't, we ain't doing no tripping. Peace.